Okay.
G'day, and welcome to the cooking section. I've got my good friend Keith Bowker here, and he has cooked all over Australia and on TV and in every place you could possibly imagine, even up in Queensland at Farm Fest.
Even up in Queensland.
Even up in Queensland, he's come to heaven. And so what we're going to do with this whole section is cook through every different cut of lamb that you can possibly get from us, which is pretty much so any cut you can get anywhere in the world, and you're going to have different spins on it.
Yep. We're going to try and use a lot of Australian ingredients where we can, but also allowing for the fact that Australia is a very multicultural country. We'll be bringing in Mediterranean influences and South American, so people can take Farmer Dave's free-range lamb and adapt it to their own cultural cooking.
So if they're a Victorian, they can still enjoy the lamb, can't they?
That's right.
They have a Mexican influence. So yeah, so we're going to do every single cut, all different kind of ways. So enjoy, and you'll be able to get it all on DVD as well. And let's get cooking.
Okay, let's start off, I reckon, with one of the meals that everybody really likes during the colder months. And we're actually down in Melbourne today, so the colder months could be any month of the year, including December and January. So we're going to do something with
It is today. It's winter today.
So we're going to do something with lamb shanks.
Lamb shanks. We love lamb shanks.
Now, Farmer Dave has two ways of presenting these. Full lamb shank, as we've got here, and a Frenched lamb shank, which is basically where we remove all the sinew, fat and meat from the bottom third of the leg there.
Why is it called Frenched?
I don't know, I've never performed French on a lamb, but you can't actually.
I've never understood it because French, you know, most French things usually have frills and usually come with lots of rot, but when you French something, you take away all the stuff that you don't need, which is really strange.
In which case you think it would be called Scottish. No. Okay, now we're going to do a very, very simple marinade with the lamb, and this is going to be one of the simplest things to cook. As I travel around, a lot of people talk about lamb shanks being something really difficult to do. It's just a case of cooking them really long and slow and marinating them properly, which means overnight, and not just whack them in the fridge for an hour and hope they come out okay, or, you know, like Uncle Bob does on the barbecue, paint something over them and hope it works.
But lamb shanks now, they're something that's really, it's kind of a flash dish. You know, when I was growing up, which is still now, a lamb shank was used to help sawing up the lambs. You used it so you didn't cut off your fingers on the bandsaw. But now it is a flash thing, so you usually do prepare, and you've usually got friends well in advance booked for the event, so it's not like you would be like, oh goodness me, we're about to have lamb shanks. So it's something you'd always prepare for, yeah?
Well, it used to be just a cheap cut of meat that was like, couldn't afford anything else, let's get lamb shanks, nobody else wants to buy them, let's slow braise them for half a day so the meat tenderises. Yep. And then people suddenly thought, oh, if I put a nice red wine sauce with this, if I added something different into it and added more flavour into it, then it went from being the poor man's food to pay a small fortune in a hotel for a dish. Yep. And we're going to make quite a gourmet dish of it today using some good Queensland ingredients, as well as things from down here in Victoria as well, so we're going to mix the two states. Yep. But it is the simplest thing in the world. Should we get on with it?
I think we should.
Okay, what we're going to do, nice big container, because we're going to do 6 lamb shanks all at the same time.
Right. How many people is that? Is it one lamb shank per person?
I would normally kind of allow 2.
Right.
Look, it's a huge amount of food, so you could just put 1 in there.
Yeah.
So looking at the size of these, they are fairly massive. You'd probably only put 1 on per person. Right. But we'll do 6 lamb shanks because then we've got a whole table full of people. So we're just going to pop the lamb shanks actually into here.
Last thing you want is anyone going home hungry.
That never happens at my house. Never. As you're going to discover by the end of the day.
Excellent.
So this is the audience participation part, or in your case, you. So pop the lamb shanks just into the container, because all we're going to do now is build up the marinade over the top of it.
6.
Then I'm going to get some onions cut up. Now we're kind of going on very much a red theme here. Now, tips with onions. It's one of those things where I hear people all the time saying I cry over onions, and there's 1,000,001 different theories on how you don't cry over them. If you don't want to cry over them, wear a face mask. Because it's inhaling the onion that causes the whole problem, of course. And so we're going to finely dice them. Now there's going to be all sorts of tips come out here as well as your food. Make sure you've got a decent knife. There's no point having a plastic handled little bendy knife that costs you $2, because it's never going to cut through the vegetables properly.
I'm a victim of having the worst knives in the entire world.
How are you with knives?
Shocking.
Okay, tip. Make sure your fingernails are pointed in.
Yep.
That way when you are cutting something, you can't go any further than your knuckle.
Okay.
Rightio? So you can never actually cut the end of your finger off because you're actually, all you can never do is rub the skin off the end of your knuckles. Now because this is going to be cooked for hours, we really don't need to have this really ultra fine because these onions are going to melt down anyway.
Yeah.
So when we're doing
So you
this...
don't need to big slice it or anything?
No.
No.
Well, I would use a power slicer if I was actually going to use a slicer of any variety there.
If you don't know, Keith introduced the power slicer to Australia.
To hundreds of thousands of you apparently. In fact this time a year or so ago you couldn't get away from me. I was on all 3 morning shows at the same day.
Power slicing.
That's right. Now we'll top the rest of it up later on, but we're just going to show you initially the ingredients that are going in there. There's going to be 2 whole onions go into there, roughly chopped. Now we're going to put in some dried apricots.
Easy.
Now I've just cut these into strips. You can use dried figs instead if you don't want to put apricots in there.
Yep.
But you know, we get these from, again, Australian apricots. And you get both apricots and figs in Queensland, so you can use either or. It's going to add a very similar sort of flavour.
At Mum and Dad's homestead we have a fig tree that's about 60 years old and amazing. It has about 3 layers of netting over it because every bird within 200 kilometres comes and thieves the figs. And then at my cottage we have an apricot tree. I've never tried drying them. They never last the drying process. But I love them. Love apricots.
Hope you like garlic. There's a lot of that in here. I grab one of the garlic cloves.
And there's a special way of doing this, is that right?
Yeah, well, it's not that, I guess, yeah, special way is the way to term it, but the whole idea is it's much easier than people think.
Yeah.
I've seen people try and spend forever peeling garlic. It's dead easy. Get your knife, put it down, hit it with your hand. Skin comes off. There's your garlic clove. So there's nothing really complex about it. It's just a case of
I cut the little ends off.
And then peel the middle off. Yeah, it takes forever. So we just wanted you to do that, and now we're going to do that with 6 or 7 garlic cloves, and again, just rough chop them. Okay, they don't need to be finely diced, because the long, slow cooking and marinating process is going to break all this down for us anyway. We're going to put some capers in there as well. You can just chuck a bit, empty the whole bowl in, that'll be fine.
Ooh.
Now I also believe you have problems chopping herbs.
Yes.
So could you pass me some fresh rosemary? Now with rosemary, it's a very twiggy herb. What you don't want to do is try and cut it up because you actually don't want to spend the meal pulling all the little bits of herb out of your teeth. So sit it on your bench and run a sharp bladed knife along it, which literally will then separate the leaves off the herb itself. Awesome. Okay, so there's no chopping. We don't actually want the twigs in there. And you're going to put about double that amount into the actual marinade itself.
Okay. So about a teaspoon.
Tablespoon.
Tablespoon.
Yeah. Put a tablespoon of fresh herb in there. Now we've sort of a couple of things to go. We're going to add in some wine.
Excellent.
Now, as a chef, I don't mind the odd drink. My favourite odd drink is number 13. So, you know, let's just put a little bit of wine in there, okay? Not much at all. Beautifully measured out. In fact, I find 750ml is really good for this dish.
Excellent.
A whole bottle. And by the way, if you look up on the web, again, if you're a local Queenslander, lots of good Cab Savs. I want you to use a Cab Sav in this. Do not use a heavier wine like a Shiraz.
Okay, why is that?
The stronger the wine needs to go with the stronger flavoured meats.
Okay.
And you know, we're here to talk about and get people to eat lamb and taste lamb. So we don't want to completely kill it with too many powerful flavours. So I would be using a Shiraz with a good fillet of beef, or with kangaroo, or maybe with goat. But let's just go a little bit softer. You could use a Merlot in here, but the Cab Sav is the perfect wine to use.
Now, is that because with a free-range product, obviously you've got a much different flavour, whereas a factory farm product, you need to add so much flavour to it?
Well, often you've got to create the flavour you need.
Yeah. Yes.
Whereas free-range has got its own natural flavour, and that's what we actually want you to taste today.
Yep.
So basically, that's about it now. Okay, we've got everything in there that we want. We'll top up the rest. We'll pop that in the fridge, and then that's going to sit in there for a minimum of 4 hours. I'd prefer you did it overnight.
Yep.
So if you've got a dinner party on tomorrow night, do it tonight, pop it in the fridge, just leave it there for 24 hours. Yep. It's soaked in alcohol, it's not going to do anything. Yep.